questions on any particular policy is I want to be back in Washington to hold our elected officials accountable for the damage they've done to this economy. This is not about a failure of capitalism. Capitalism doesn't cause this crisis. Wall Street greed didn't cause it. It was government that caused it. It was the Federal Reserve and it was Congress. And because I understood that, that's why I was able to predict it in precise accuracy everything that happened. And all the people who are now saying that it's the private sector's fault, it's capitalism's fault, these are the people who didn't see it coming. These are the people who are laughing at me. And believe me, a lot of people laughed at me for years and made fun of me for my predictions. If you want to see, if you go on YouTube and you type in Peter Schiff was right, there's one video that was seen by over 1.6 million people of people mocking me as I told them what was going to happen. So I want to go to Congress and, hey, straighten everybody out because they're clueless right now. Every single thing that they've done to solve this crisis has made the problem worse. So they need to understand that. And they need somebody who has some credibility who can explain it to them. Because there are very few people out there in the country that have the track record that I do of making these forecasts. And what I got to do is go to Congress and champion capitalism and the free market and get Congress to understand that government is the source of our problems. And we're never going to dig our way out of this ditch unless we get government out of our way. We need to dramatically cut government. I disagree with the idea that we can just cut 1% per year. We need to slash government. It is way too big. We are broke. We cannot afford it. If we want to stimulate this economy, we need to take that massive burden off of our backs of government taxes and regulation. So we need real, meaningful cuts in government spending, not just along the edges. And we need to re-empower the free market. And there are a lot of things that we can do to reintroduce market forces back into this economy. And we need to have sound monetary policy. But we can't have the interest rates at zero. We're never going to have a real economy if we don't have any savings. We need to do these reforms, and we need to make them quickly. Because the crisis that's coming, as I said, between 2010 and 2012, because of all the money that's been printed to prop up a phony economy and postpone the inevitable, we're going to create a currency crisis. And the problem with the currency crisis is when the dollar plunges in value, everybody's wages, everybody's savings are wiped out. And it's going to be far more burdensome on the average Connecticut family, even the ones that still have jobs, when they can't buy anything with their paychecks because prices are going through the roof. We think energy is expensive now. Wait till you see how much it costs when the dollar collapses, or how much food costs, or how much everything else costs. You know, when President Obama says that the average American isn't going to have to pay for the stimulus, that's who's going to pay for it. Where does he think the money's coming from? These deficits are enormous, and our grandchildren aren't going to pay for them. Our children aren't going to pay for them. They might leave the country. We're going to pay for it. We're going to pay for it with runaway inflation. And if the government reacts to that, and then when the foreigners stop buying our bonds, and interest rates soar, and the dollar collapses, if Ben Bernanke just cranks up the printing press again, if we try one more round of stimulus, we'll have hyperinflation and we'll completely destroy our currency. So before that happens, somebody needs to go to the Congress and straighten it out. And I don't know anyone else who's going to do it other than me. I don't think any career politicians are going to solve these problems. All they care about is getting reelected. That's not why I'm running. I know that they're driving this, our economy off the edge of a cliff. I want to be there and wrestle the steering wheel away before they succeed. And then I want to go back to my job. I don't want to stay there forever. Hopefully I can accomplish what I need to accomplish in 6 years. I mean, quite frankly, I don't even think we have 6 years. If I can't succeed in 6 years, I think we're in serious, serious trouble, and it might be beyond repair. Because if they sink this economy too deep into a depression, who knows how much more individual liberties we're going to end up surrendering. That is the problem. Because the more the government infects itself and interacts itself into the economy, the worse it gets. But then when the government creates a crisis, they blame capitalism and freedom for the problems that they created. And the solution is always to grow government, to expand government. And the more they expand it, the worse the crisis gets. And things could get so bad in the next few years that it really frightens me what our government can do and how much of our rights, and believe me, we've already lost a lot of them, but we can surrender the rest of them in the economic environment that I envision if we don't do something soon to change. And I know there's a lot of people running in the Republican Party now. A lot of people are saying some of the things that I've been saying about we can't keep running these deficits, we've got to stop the bailouts, we've got to start the stimulus. But I've been saying that stuff for years. There are a lot of politicians that will say stuff, but who knows what they're going to do when they get elected. I know everybody in this room has probably voted for Republicans and been very disappointed in how they've governed. That is the biggest problem. They talk a good talk, but they don't walk the walk. When they get to Washington, they don't care about how they got there. They want to stay there. And the way they stay there is growing government, making government bigger. I'm not going to do that, and that's not why I'm going. And nobody is going to go to the polls and vote for me because they're voting against somebody else. This is not going to be an election where you've got the lesser of two evils. I'm going to give every Republican in this state somebody to vote for instead of somebody to vote against. And anyway, let me take your questions on any of the issues.
You know anybody in the Congress that would stand with you?
Well, the only one I know is Ron Paul. I was his economic advisor in 2008 when he ran for president. And of course, Ron Paul was the only presidential candidate to have gotten the economy right. Yes?
How do foreign banks stealing trillions of dollars from the people in the country, how do you plan on making that?
Well, I don't follow your question. I don't know how foreign banks are stealing money.
They stole trillions of dollars from our economy.
Well, I'm not familiar with how they stole the money. I'm more concerned about the Federal Reserve, our bank, which is undermined. Yeah, that's not a foreign bank. That's a domestic bank. Yeah, well, it's the Federal Reserve, which is a private bank. It's not It's not a government agency. It's a private banking syndicate. But they have undermined our economy. The Federal Reserve was the single biggest culprit in the financial crisis. You know, and Alan Greenspan now pretends that this was some kind of 100-year flood. It wasn't a 100-year flood. Alan Greenspan blew up the dam, and that's why there was a flood. Had we had a responsible central banker that had the guts to stand up to the politicians and didn't try to artificially stimulate the economy, if they allowed recessions to run their natural course instead of interfering with them. You see, what people don't understand about business cycles is the problems are the booms. When you have an artificial boom that's created by easy credit, people make a lot of mistakes. People do foolish things. And it's in the recession where those mistakes are corrected. And correcting those mistakes is often painful because some people lose their jobs, some people lose money. But if the market does it, it'll happen quickly, and then you'll have a real recovery. But what happens is politicians and central bankers don't like that because the voters don't like it. So they do things to artificially stimulate the economy. But they're not stimulating the economy, they're stimulating the problems. They're basically it's the equivalent of giving an alcoholic more alcohol because he doesn't want to be sober. And that is the problem because the hangover is the more that you drink, the worse the hangover. And unfortunately, under Ben Bernanke now, he's given us a much bigger dose of alcohol. We are way more high, and when this stuff wears off, it is going to be one massive, massive recession. And it's not going to be a recession. I think we are going to call it a depression. And I think we're going to have to rename the Great Depression because we might beat it out.
I just had a question. You talk about raising interest rates and cutting government spending. It sounds a lot to me like the Volcker disinflation in the early 80s. And I could be wrong. Correct me please if I am. But that also precipitated a short-term economic jolt for a long-term gain. Can you implement this plan without that short-term pain that we saw in the early 80s?
Yeah, well, there's always going to be pain for some people. Some people will immediately benefit. You know, I know there are a lot of people right now that have, that have money, and older people. I mean, they're hurting because they can't get any return on CDs. There's no yield. The government is forcing them to take a lot of risk to try to make up for that. So a lot of people will immediately benefit from higher interest rates. I mean, people are earning interest rates. But also, I think that to the extent that we can get government off the backs of industries, there'll be a lot more jobs being created in that environment. But certainly, people that are on government payrolls, I mean, there's going to be some loss of jobs there. There's going to be a loss of jobs in the service sector. There's going to be a lot more loss of jobs in financial services. But we'll gain more jobs in other areas. We can't keep artificially propping up non-viable jobs because that's destroying the productivity of the economy. But we can't keep looking for these short-term quick fixes. That's all politicians care about. It's the same thing in the investment game. I don't care about short-term performance. It doesn't matter to me what my clients' stocks do in the short run. They go up, they go down. It doesn't matter. All I care about in the short run is the dividend yield. That's all that counts. How